for coming on the show. Starting on land rigs, offshore rigs, shipyards. How early did you start in this business?
Wow, man. First of all, thanks for letting me come on here and speak. It's a pleasure. I started in this business around 1993. I was working in December in Livingston, in between Edinburgh and Glasgow, at an NEC factory, a semiconductor factory, doing some electrical construction for £220 a week in minus 18 temperatures. One of the coldest winters in Glasgow that I've ever recall. And somebody phoned me and said, "Would you like to go to Cairo to work on the rig?" And I said, "How much?" And he said, 2,500 British pounds a month. I said, "When do I need to go? Who do I need to draw?" And that was it was really cold. I just remember it was so cold. My ex-wife was, "Where are you going?" I said, "I just resigned. I'm going to Cairo on Monday morning." And I flew out to Cairo. And I do nothing. I'd been on a jack up in Rotterdam in the yard, Maersk, the Maersk Giant. I think it was at the time. And one of the electricians had said that he sort of thought I knew what I was doing and give me the email address of somebody in HR to send them my CV. And I did a test, and at Maersk used to give you some psychological test. And then they asked me to start in Cairo, and so I landed in Cairo. Yeah, sometime in December 1993, I think it was 1994, around about that time. It was a weekend, so it would be a Saturday or a Friday, and there was only one guy in the office, an American drilling superintendent, and he said, "Welcome to Cairo, and this is EDC, Egyptian Drilling Company, which was a 50% stake by Maersk. Maersk used to own 50% stake in that company." He said, "Don't upset the locals, don't work live, and don't get drunk, and you'll last here as long as you like." And I I'm not a drinker. I don't do that anymore. I don't not bother. I didn't know anything about the locals. I didn't know anything about Egyptians or the Muslim faith. I had no idea what they were talking about. And I never worked live. So I lasted quite a long time. And then he says, "Okay, well, we'll go into the rig now." I said, "Okay, where do we get the chopper from?" Because I just assimilated all rigs with choppers and, jump on the chopper, put your gear on, and then off you pop. And he said, "What chopper?" I said, "Well, how do we get to the rig? We've got to go somewhere to get a chopper to go to the rig." He went, "Chopper? There's no chopper with this rig. It's a land rig." I said, I didn't say to him, my old brain was going, what's a land rig? I've never heard of a land rig before. And he drove me through the desert about 2 hours, somewhere west of Cairo. And there this bloody great big 3,000 horsepower land rig was, with a full crew of probably 80, 90 Egyptians, a senior tool pusher who was from Denmark, and a mechanic who was out of Liverpool or somewhere like that. Liverpool yard, originally Liverpool, but out of Yarmouth. And there was me on this land rig, never been on a working rig per se in my life, and sent me to this land rig. He said, "Off you go. See you in a month's time, and we'll take you back to the airport, and you can go on for a month." And that's where it started. I went to a land rig somewhere in the Western Desert, or in the middle of the desert, and it carried on from there. So I stayed there for possibly about 3 years. I think I was on the land rigs for about 3 years, and then they transferred 2.5 years or something. And they asked me to go offshore on a rig in Egypt, offshore, which is more your standard jack up with offshore stuff. That didn't. The Egyptian rigs at the time were not great, if we're honest. The food was ropey and the conditions were ropey. It was shared communal bathrooms. It was just really ropey, to be honest. And yeah, there was a couple of instances we can talk about. My initial stay on on that jack-up ended when a local electrician who was working under me, who I took full responsibility, was going to check the air gap on the brakes on the motor and on the cranes, on all the cranes. I think we had 3 cranes on that rig. And he waved to me going across the deck. I was the tool pusher. We were stracking the pipe or something, you know. I'm an electrical guy, and stracking the pipe was not really what I should have been doing. I should have been doing something else. But we all, as a expat crew, you sort of mucked in and helped each other. And this guy was waving, the feeler gauges at me and saying, "I'm going to measure the air gap on this brake, boss, and I'll be down in a minute." And he did the first one. I didn't take any notice. I carried on strapping the pipe with Paul. Went up to the office, and we were going through the pipe tallying on it. And just heard this thud and didn't know what had happened, and we went downstairs. I actually went out to the gantry, and the crane was in the water. The boom that the guy was testing with these feeder gauges. Well, he didn't actually show me the adjustable spanner he had in his back pocket, and apparently he changed the air gap and didn't put the boom in the stands and undid the wrong bolts and released the brake, and the next thing, the boom's in the sea, and the cranes are right off, right? So yeah, I paid the price. Actually, I stayed on the board for a week, getting the crane back out of the sea, putting a new boom on with another geezer out of Dundee who came on to give us a hand. And then my boss said to me, "Listen, the company man wants to run you off because you shouted at him. There was a lot of tension at the time. He was trying to rip into the local guy, and I pulled the local guy out and said to them, you come and talk to me, mate. You want to talk to anybody, but not that polite." And they said, "We're going to run you off."
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt this show, and I really hope you're enjoying it. One thing I'm going to ask you, if you're listening to it and you're not liking, following or subscribing to it, could I ask a massive favour that you do? It really helps the show, it helps me bring in more people, and it helps me get more stories out there, which in favour brings more stories back in. Let's get back to it.
So they run me off, and I was sent to the North Sea as penance.
Punishment.
I was sent to the Maersk Enhancer up in the North Sea, or the Maersk Endurer, or one of them. I think it was Enhancer actually. Go up to the North Sea for a couple of trips while the dust settles. Maersk were very good there, very good company. I can't say anything about it. They looked after me. They said, "Look, we know it's political. You got run off and sit here." And then eventually I went back. To be honest, about 6 months later, they called me back to another rig in Egypt, brand new rig in somewhere else in the Western Desert. And then that's when I went on to different rigs and different parts of the business of Egyptian drilling companies. So yeah, kind of interesting start to my life offshore. But when you go off to this oil business, I come out of construction. And I get sent to the rig in Cairo, and somebody would say, "This is broken, the trip tank's not working." And I'm like, "What's a trip tank? I don't want a trip tank. What's a trip tank?" And then you don't, because you're earning decent money, and you don't want to be a banana, and people don't. What's this guy? He doesn't even know where nothing is. So I use the local guys. "Hey, where's the trip tank, man?" And it was just a tanker. They put mud in and it pumped it down the hole and back out the hole, or whatever they're pumping down the hole. Could be anything, right? And then the pump had stopped, the motor had stopped, and I had to go and fix it. But half the problem was trying to find the equipment, not know where nothing was. So yeah, kind of difficult environment to get into in the beginning. Very closed, but a great experience, to be honest. Yeah. So. What else?
How long did you do offshore then?
We used to do a month there.
Right.
A month and a month. But we were salaried. We weren't, like it is now. It's very day rate and robbing the guys blind and really not paying them what they're worth, to be honest. We were on 2,500 GB pounds a month, home and away. Every month you got that salary. So it's kind of decent money now. We went away for a month and we come back for a month. And what I find different today is that, I didn't know anything about this business. I didn't know anything about any business, to be honest. But But when we were leaving, or just as you were to leave, the HR people would phone you and say, "How are you doing? You know, how's your wife and how's the children?" Oh, that's kind of different. And then, you know, is there anything you need when you go to the rig and blah, blah, blah. And then when you were leaving, they would call you and say, safe trip home and give us a call when you're home if you need anything, blah, blah, blah. And I think we're losing that in all sorts of businesses. You know, Maersk were very high standard of personnel. They really, really looked after their personnel. And I think we're losing that today across all businesses. You know, we've become a numbers, numbers and not people. And the Maersk did eventually go that way. And, you know, it became a numbers game and a lot of people left and didn't like it. But, yeah, I was kind of, you know, when you went to Denmark, people were proud to work for Maersk, and people in the village, in the town like Esbjerg and Copenhagen, they were proud to tell people that their family were working for Maersk. That's how popular Maersk was at one time. And I was proud to work for them too, because they were very good at and they looked after people. And, you know, one story, my ex-wife got breast cancer, and I called them and said, look, no, this has come up all of a sudden, you know, it's not something you plan, right? And it came up very suddenly, and they backed me from the start to the finish of that process. They were behind me 100%. All they asked me to do was, after I took about 3 months off to get my ex-wife through this treatment and whatever she had to go through, and they backed me and they called me constantly. And after we finished the treatment and I was ready to go out to work, they said, if you do 21 days extra of courses, training courses, unpaid, we will forget everything. We will wipe everything off and back you, because we know it's. So I did. I went to do some courses, and after I did the first course, they said, forget it. It's okay.
Fair play to them, like.
That's the sort of company that, and I'm not sure about other companies, but they were really, really up there. And people wanted to go back to work because they were a good company. And you weren't going back because the money was good. You were going because the money was good and it was a decent place to go to work. They really quite looked after you. So, yeah, kind of nice.
Where did you go from offshore then? What was next?
Well, I went to about 1999, I think it was. The market collapsed. The oil price dropped down to like $11 a barrel. It was kind of ridiculous. So what would happen is, as you were going into Cairo on your shift, where they knew you were not coming back, but you didn't know, right? They would meet you in a big hotel in Cairo and they say, listen, there's a possibility you're not coming back to this rig, because your Maersk was Danish and everybody understood they had to get the Danes in and look after them and get all the locals stayed anyway. But that was cool. I was quite happy with it. You know, I knew it was a Danish company, and you know, you've got to look after your own in any market. So they said to me in, I think it was December 99 or something, that you might not come back, but we'll call you when you go home. And they did. They called me when I went home. They said, that we haven't got any work. The market's really quiet for land rigs and offshore rigs. So we're going to release you. I think it was in February or something. And we'll pay you for another 3 months after that. How does that fit? That's cool. That's cool. So I went to work at Greenock on a FPSO in Greenock shipyard, which is, you know, kind of different, right? Shipyards.
Yeah. Always different.
In fact, you've got people walking around with cable ties, you know, and embarrassed when they've only used one too many. You know, they've still got 20 left from last year, like. And they're really like, I've never seen anything like it. It was really kind of eye-opener for me that you could have hundreds of people doing nothing. I was really quite shocked, and going on strike at 3:00 in the morning because, you know, somebody's sausage rolls were cold or something. Next thing you know, we were walking down out the shipyard, you know, having a meeting to go on strike, and then people were walking down the M8 because they didn't know how to get home at 3 a.m. because they were on strike. Like, I was like, what is this, man? And then I think another time they told me, I went in one Sunday night, and Sunday was a big winner. And, you know, if you're doing a Sunday night shift, it's kind of a lot of money in Glasgow shipyard life. So it was a Sunday night, and I drove from Airdrie over to Greenock, got to the yard and they said, "Oh no, we're going out tonight." I said, "What for?" They said, "Somebody died." I said, "Oh, that's kind of sad, man. Was it an accident in the shipyard?" No. I said, "So how did he die that?" "Oh, he died of a heart attack in the house on Friday afternoon." I said, "So why have I got to go out for that then?" "Oh, because it's a mark of respect. We all take one shift off." I said, "But surely it's better to work the shift than give the wife the money." The money. They're like, no, we take a shift off, and then we went back on the Monday, and then have another collection. Instead of giving him the money from Sunday, they had another collection. So I put a $5 in, and the guy growled at me and said, "It's a minimum of a tenner." So I put a tenner in, and you just lost a shift, on a Sunday night, and you're thinking, what sort of life is this? And then, but then he asked for people for voluntary redundancy, and a couple of weeks later, and my hand was the first to go up.
See you later, mate.
I'm out the door, and I said, "I can't be doing this stuff. This is kind of no, not for me." And then I got a call from Santa Fe, which is a big drilling contractor at the time.
Yeah.
Really quite large. And they called me and said, again, could I go to Aberdeen, do a test? I got to meet this guy, Mark Dankowski, who became a good friend, and work for them. And I took the job, and I went to Qatar to work on a jack-up initially, coming out of the yard. And they're American, right? Now, they're not Danish, and they're not, they're not family-orientated like the Mr. McKinney Muller at Maersk. They weren't like him. They were very get after it and do your shift and shut up and go home after and party and all that stuff. That sort of come. And it was a bit of a culture shock for me. So I ended up going out to Qatar, stayed for a couple of months on a jack-up that was coming out of the yard, somewhere in Qatar, or it might have been in Dubai, going to Qatar or something. And then they asked for volunteers to go to some land rigs in Saudi Arabia, and I'm a sucker for being a volunteer, me, mate. So I said, "Yeah, I'll go." And another geezer who I'd known at Maersk, he said, "I'll go." So we both went. It was a nightmare, mate. They were putting these land rigs together in Saudi. I don't know if you've ever been to Saudi, but I've been since. It's all right. I'm not going to slack off the country, but it wasn't nice. It was not nice. You got to the country, they checked your bags, they checked your floppy disk. We had floppy disks then. That's how long ago.
Yeah.
They checked your newspapers. They blacked out what they didn't want to see. They took stuff off you and said, "We'll send it to you." You never got it back. If you got into, I think it was Dammam at the time. If you went into Dammam Airport and a plane load of locals come in, you went to the back of the queue and you could be there for 4 or 5 hours getting out of the airport. 4 or 5 hours getting into the airport. It's like, oh my goodness, what is this all about? But I stayed for a while. I was there for about a year and a half in Saudi. I put the rig together and I stayed on it as the electrician on the rig and run it. We had a lot of problems, a lot of blackouts, and the rigs were run by, it was an Aussie guy, I can't remember his name now, he was a good guy though. But it's kind of stressful because Aramco's at the time were very stressful. And they shut the rig down. If you shut down, you're on no day rate. Then you got calls from town while you shut down. We had a lot of electrical problems, and I had a quick temper, to be if truth, No, I wasn't nasty, but I could give it when I wanted to give it.
Yeah.
And the company man, would shut the rig down because there was music on. They listed up the Gaytronics telephone, and there was music playing in the background. So obviously somebody had, the radio playing somewhere, and he come, "Why have I got music on the telephone?" I said, "It's free, man. We don't charge, right? It's cool. Just listen to it and chill out." And they were not in for humour. But the Americans, like I said, there were some good funny things that happened. There's one that springs to mind, was probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen in the oil field. Was the ice cream machine. Americans love to have ice cream machines.
Yeah.
I'd never see. We didn't have one on the Maersk rig, and if we'd have asked it, they'd probably run us off. But we had this ice cream machine. But the ice cream, and then you had a senior mess hall and a junior mess hall. Very, very like different.
Yeah.
So the ice cream machine was in the senior mess hall. So all the locals, everybody would shoot up to the senior mess hall, get a coffee cup and fill it with Scooty ice cream, the white stuff that comes out, creamy ice cream, and then take the cups away and take them to the room and, enjoy ice cream frequently, right? So the tool pusher was an American guy, come out of one of the nice states, one of the big sea places over in America. But I remember him talking about it, lovely guy there. But he called everybody to the mess hall, the whole crew, come up the mess hall. We're all up there, and he says, look, we've got this problem. The catering crew have washed and cleaned the ice cream machine, but we found out they cleaned it with the wrong stuff, the wrong fluid. They cleaned it with this fluid that could make you violently ill if you take it. And all these people are looking up, and he said, what we're going to do is, and he really dragged it out, what we're going to do is, anybody that's had ice cream over the last couple of days, last week, we're going to take you into town, into hospital. You'll be waiting there. They'll look after you. You'll get your dinner. You get everything. They'll really look after you. You get a couple of days off work. And then once it's all clear, we'll bring you back. But we don't expect there's any problem, but there might be some problems. So if anybody's had ice cream over the last couple of, last week or 10 days, whatever he said, raise your hands, and then we'll start creating a list. We'll take it to the hospital. So all these people up their hands, all these people. Hundreds of hands goes up, and he said, right, listen, all those people with their hands up, can you please bring the cups back?
Gotcha.
Because there was no cup for it. Just like, that was comical. There was more, you'd go to bed and there would be like crickets under your bed, taped in a cup under your bed. The laundry was, people would exchange laundry. You'd wake up with somebody else's laundry. It was just, you would find, what do you call that? Tabasco sauce in your toothpaste. They would squeeze it in the end of your toothpaste, and then the next thing you burn your mouth. And it was that sort of very macho environment. It was fun. I must say, it was great fun. You probably couldn't get away with it today. Some of the stuff we got away with.
No.
I was going up on the land rigs. They have elevators, to go up to the rig because they're kind of lazy over that part of the world. So they don't like walking on the stairs. So
No.
they've got these elevators that lift them up there. And I'll be halfway up the elevator, and then the tool push would be hanging out with a hose pipe, blasting you and all that stuff. But and then on the other side on the work side, it was the first time I'd ever come across H2S gas, which is deadly, absolutely deadly. And I, they talk, anybody goes training and has dealt with H2S gas, they talk about 10 parts per million being deadly, enough to kill you. This was at 600, 800 parts per million. This was massive. This was heavy, heavy gas. So what they did, they reduced the crew. Most crew lived 5 kilometres away in the camp. On the rig was the electrician, the tool pusher, the company man, the derrick man, and the driller, I think, mechanic probably. And they kept it very tight because they couldn't afford any desk. It was dangerous shit. So I wore a BA set for the whole month I was out there, and probably the next month too. It was quite a long time. But some of the stuff that, I recall a derrick man on the shaker tanks or something, and he couldn't breathe. Maybe the air was running out, and he didn't know what to do. So his immediate reaction was to take the mask off. Now we're dealing with hundreds of parts per million that kill you, and you'll be dead in seconds. And I saw the tool pusher legging it down the stairs and trying to get this guy's mask back on, and then he stopped. He pulled to the shoe, I think, and come out and said, got everybody up to the canteen 5 kilometres away and said, listen, if you can't do this, there's no shame. But this is not a safety drill. This is not a drill, man. This is the real McCoy. We can't have people taking their masks off on the shaker tank. We just can't. If you're not comfortable, let me know and I'll get somebody else. I'm not going to run you off. We're quite okay with it. We know it's dangerous and it's nasty. And he explained to the guy, that keep your mask on and move upwind, then take your mask off and then adjust. But yeah, it was kind of a scary time, man, to be honest. But you need leaders. I see so many leaders in these offices. I wouldn't like to be behind them in a waller, to be truthful. But some of the people I've met offshore, I would follow them. I would follow them. Some of them, there was another guy come on to that rig, and what he did was he checked it all before he went on. So what he would do, I would be under the rig floor, I would go up with him, and he would release the flow paddle while the driller was on the brake, and to see the reaction of his driller. He explained to me, I want to see, do I have a driller or do I have somebody standing up there on the brake?
Good.
So if I've got a driller, I can then think I can leave him be and just monitor him. But if I've got somebody just being up there on the brake, doesn't know what he's doing, I'm in trouble with this gas. And these people were leaders. They're real leaders that did that stuff to save everybody else the problems later on. And, and like I said, in offices, at the latter part of my career, I've not seen many of them people I would follow, to be honest. And, not in a war or in a dangerous situation. You find some fantastic leaders offshore, to be honest. Yeah.
Why do you think that's changing? Why do you think we are coming across lesser leaders, should we say?
I'm not sure if it's... I don't know what they're like offshore nowadays. I can't tell you. It's a long while since I've been offshore. I don't see much changing because offshore they tend to focus on what to do. What we've got to do is this. Let's get it done, and we'll figure out how we did it, and we'll talk about it after. There's less politics offshore. There's in the cultural world that I studied later. There's a thing called clumsy solutions, which is what the offshore people do. So when somebody gets asked to fix something, we fix it and we drink tea and we have a laugh and we get on with it. In the office side of stuff, they don't fix shit. Truth, they create problems.
Someone else to sort.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. There is some leaders, I can name in offices that I've seen over the last 20 years, but you could probably count them on two fingers. To be honest. And I mean, somebody that you would stand behind if they said, we're going over there, regardless whether they've bought a new company and they're going this direction or whether they were going offshore and there was trouble, you could follow them. And that's in the energy space, any space, to be honest, you need leaders that you will follow, come what may. Would you follow that guy if he was walking into trouble? Would you have faith in him? Regardless, you've got to follow him. And I don't think in business we've got enough, to be honest. I think because it's all, people knifing each other to get to the top of the chair, to massage their own egos. And
I think a lot of that also comes from, I think a lot of people, I found recently actually, a lot of people are scared to make decisions and get it wrong. I think that's the other thing. Yeah. Which isn't a bad thing, I don't think. I don't think it's bad to get things wrong, but if you've made a decision and you stick with it, okay, it might not come up brilliantly, but, at least it's a bit of confidence in someone making decisions, isn't it?
Yeah, decision making is crucial. I don't have a problem making decisions because you never learn if you don't make a decision. You'll never learn. Yeah. So you've got to make decisions to say, "Oh, that was right. I can tidy it up a bit," or "That was wrong. I'll do something else." But making them decisions with other people happens more offshore. In my career, decision making in the office is usually centered from top down, whereas offshore, the guys on the field can generally make the decisions to say that this is going to keep us safe. We're going to do this. Report back to the people offshore, onshore, and they go, "Okay, go ahead," because the leaders are in the field.
Yeah, making the decisions.
Yeah, like I said,
before you came on, I asked you for a heap of stuff about you, so I can do a bit of research and whatnot. But one of the things you mentioned was the deaths in the North Sea. Yeah. And from your experience and the tragedies you've had, Yeah. What? Tell us a bit about that.
I went to Santa Fe actually. Can't remember, 2000 maybe. The year 2000 must be around about there. When I said earlier in the conversation that I volunteered for the rigs in Saudi, this is when it happened. Santa Fe were an American outfit. You know, they were good too. They're okay. But there was about 5 deaths very quickly in that company. I think 2 in the North Sea, and no, it could be 3. There was 5. I recall there was 5 deaths very, very quickly, in very quick succession. One of them was when they pulled the guy through the conductor pipe, or through the drill pipe, through the table. I think he was working there below or something.
Oh, yeah.
Pulled it up, and there was a communication error. Poor guy got killed. And there was a few others. And then what happened was, Santa Fe started sending a real heavy brigade down. So you would get like the CEO would turn up on a land rig in Saudi on a Sunday for a safety meeting. This is really what it was. Really, bang! They come down and they were trying to figure out what was happening. Reactive, of course, but on our side, I don't think there was a lot of fear there, because people are dying, right? And then tied with that, the political side, you got the political side, obviously, behind everything. Santa Fe were forced to sell out or to be bought by Transocean or Global at the time, I think it was. So they then became Global Santa Fe. I think BP would push him or something. So they become Global Santa Fe, and then they took Transocean. There's a few of them that all went together. But everything changes quite quickly because once you kill that many people, your reputation, the business is damaged, so that things need to change. It's just kind of like on the Maersk side. What I saw was in the Western Desert one time they killed a guy in the casing. They were running casing down the stands or something, so they were racking it up, and the guy got squashed. But that rig was very tense. All the time you were on it was very tense for some reason. That there was no leader. It was somebody you would put in an office, and he would tell you what to do because he knew it all, and he wouldn't listen. There was no humility there, and it was a very tense rig. And I can recall one of my pals come down. He was on the rig when they killed a guy, and it was like, oh man, scary stuff, and you start to question, do I want to be in this business when people are getting killed? Right? Because it was very quick. It was like I said, it was quite a few very quickly. There was a lot of pressure on. There was safety meetings, but she went crazy with safety meetings. People coming down and all sorts of stuff that was going on. You had to do. I can't recall. There was a lot of stuff. But did it change? Does sending 50 stop cards a day change anything? I don't know. I've got my own views. I think it comes from within the people, and if leaders are, like I said, if they're ones you will follow, then I think the culture will shift. But we can talk about that later. But yeah, it's a scary time, with the gas, because it was all the gas was around, and it was all at the same time in Saudi. We were working under intense pressure with H2S gas and people getting killed in the North Sea and elsewhere. And it was kind of nasty. Yeah, but you don't want to see anybody not be able to go home from work. That should be a given that you should go home from work.
Was there any instances where crews were being abused from when you were working?
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been part of it. I'm not proud. I probably said things I shouldn't have said. Probably done things I shouldn't have done. Culturally blind. Didn't understand the Muslim faith, to be honest. Didn't understand the culture over that side of the planet. I remember, I remember being on one rig in Egypt, and I threw a shoe at somebody down the stairs. He was shouting at me and giving me lots of grief. He was an assistant electrician, and I fired a shoe down the stairs, which is one of the most nastiest things you can do in the Muslim world. I didn't know that, to be honest. I found out very quickly. And then learn, and that comes into my cultural studies later on. But I've seen people get slapped by the tool pusher, punched and kicked, and drillers really laying it on. It was a rough place. the tool pushers. Yeah, I'm an electrician, and when we moved land rigs, my job was to muck in and line up pumps and do stuff that I wasn't comfortable with. And the tool pusher would chase you. If he thought you were, tossing it off, he would come looking to clout your own ear, old man, because that's just the way they were, right?
Really?
But it was. Like I said, it doesn't go on now. I'm not sure if it does, but I wouldn't like to think it would go on now. But it made me grow up very fast now. To be honest, but there was a lot of naughty stuff going on.
Yeah, it seemed to be that kind of generation, 70s, 80s, 90s, that was kind of, unfortunately, the culture in the industry, was it?
There was a guy, I can't say his name because it would have known him, and if I tell this story, people will know who he is anyway. But there was a guy from that American outfit that I met, and I thought he was a lovely man. I thought he was a really nice man. And people told me stories about him, and I thought, never. He used to line the drill crew up before they went on tower on shift and send them back to their cabin to comb their hair and to get clean boiler suits on and to make sure the T-shirts were clean and their boots were clean. And he was very, very, very and he was sending these guys back to their cabin. And I thought, no, man. And it was brutal. This guy, it was absolutely brutal. But, rightly or wrongly, I don't know. I used to think, he's a lovely man. But everyone would know this guy because it's just the way he was. He wanted everybody, doing the same thing and wearing the same stuff and behaving in the same manner. Kind of an aggressive way to try and establish your culture. But,
Yeah.
And there was others. He wasn't the only one. The Americans were full of that stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, quite brutal from some of the stories I've heard. Back in the day, should we say? After the field, you went quite heavy. Well, I think you said you mentioned were you still in the field when you went quite heavily on the academical side?
No, I went to not really. No, I went out of Maersk. I was going through a messy divorce, and as many people do in this business, it's part and parcel of life in this business.
Unfortunately,
it's kind of harsh, but there's ways I think you could learn about that. But I think I left Maersk under a black cloud, and I was kind of going through some dodgy stuff, and I wasn't a good person to be with at the time, if I'm honest. Probably wasn't a good person to have working here. That's for one thing. And then I ended up going into the inspection business for one of the well-known inspection companies. So I went into that business, inspected rigs. Again, sort of had a rough idea what we were doing. It was kind of an interesting job, but it was that part of that company that they were sold. The chairman sold the company to a large company, large inspection, Lloyd's Register. They sold the company to Lloyd's Register. I could name them because there's no lies now. And then part of that deal was my boss called me, who is one of them people I would follow into the fire at the time, and I would still do so today with that guy. And he asked me, "Would you like to come into the office?" And I thought, "What for? I'm an inspector, what do I do? I'm just an electrician here, man, I don't know too much else. I need, how to do electrics." And he said, "I'm putting this big technical team together." And I thought, doesn't sound like me, man. I'm not really into that sort of shit. And he said, "Well, think about it." And then I weighed it up and I thought, I've divorced. I've got no money. Everything went to my ex-wife, and this could keep me on my feet for a couple of years. Whatever. Right or wrong, I said, "Okay, I'll take it." And he said, "You'd be part of this centre of excellence." Centre of excellence, something. I don't know nothing about nothing. And he wanted me to be the centre of excellence. And one of these guys who I was working with as an inspector at the time said to me, "You're actually leaving the field to become an overhead." And I said, "What?" He said, "You're doing it in the overhead department." And I didn't know what he was about. And I thought, I'll figure it out. I'm sure I'll figure something out. And I went into the office, as a technical something, I can't recall what it was, technical lead or something, and there was all these people, and this boss who was as aggressive as me, and we clashed. But I went in there and I thought, what's this all about? I thought they were all talking German. I said, what are they doing here? Nobody's doing anything. They're all arguing and knifing each other. And I thought, I think I lasted about 6 weeks actually. And I called my boss and I said, listen, I've got this problem, mate. I can't do this. Why not? And I said, because they're all fighting the bit out, man. They're all stabbing each other in the back and talking about each other. And, he's shit. And this one's that and this one's that. And they're writing proposals and they've got no idea what they're writing. And then the client's asking stuff and they're arguing with the client. I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't do this. I said, so can I go back offshore as an inspector? And he said, listen, go away and think about it. Come to the office, do what you've got to do, but over the next, I think, few weeks, he said, think about it. Think about long term, think about that. And he was good. He was very good. He said, so, okay, I went out, I thought about it, and I met a guy in the office, a Singaporean guy, and I recall him saying he was going to university part-time. And my question to him was, so why are you going to university? He worked in, I'd shifted from the technical department into the sales department because apparently I was not bad at communicating and getting people on side, and because I understood the technical side of the business, and I have this character that could bring these people on board. They said I'll be better in that position, which was true. So I just go, so what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And he said, I'm doing a bachelor's in business. And I thought, why are you doing that? And his answer was, because I want more money. And I thought, that's not really a good motive to want to learn. So I went to the university where he was, somewhere down in Singapore then. It was a UK university with a campus here. And I asked this person, what do I need to do to get a degree and join this course? And they said, pay the money. Okay, man, you could join. So I sort of joined. I started a bachelor's in, can't remember, I was about 47 years old then. But my aim was to try and figure out what was happening in the office. If surely this business degree would give me something that I felt I was missing. Maybe electricians don't know about business. I'm not sure. And I didn't understand what these people were doing. Why matey was sitting at the back going for a drink every day and falling asleep in the afternoon and not doing nothing, and the other guys arguing with clients. And I'm thinking, this is twisted. This is all, they've got such powerful people in this office, and it's just a disaster. Just dysfunction at its finest. So I started a degree, and the bachelor's was all right. It's kind of okay, fairly straightforward, and I learned about marketing and and operations and stuff. And it wasn't the course; it was some of the lecturers I met. They asked me, you're from technical, right? They're not from the office. I said, no, I'm technical. And this lady asked me, how do you get on with the politics? That was her question. And I said, what are you talking about? And then she explained all this backstabbing and knifing at work and how people do that to get where they want to go. And I thought, now, and the picture started to become clearer. And then I went on later. I was working full time, to be honest, when I did the bachelor's and the master's and the doctorate, to be honest. But I went in and did an MBA after that. Again, because I was drawn by this cultural thing, this, how people do what they do and why they do what they do, and why they've got so much skill in their office, and yet they're all fighting a bit out. And the sales are fighting with the technical, and technical's fighting with the finance fighting with the bosses, and they're all fighting with each other, right? I couldn't really get it that. So I did an MBA, and I looked at stuff linked to culture, but across different markets. Oil and gas, but Myanmar, I think I did, in somewhere else. Then I started to get really drawn into this cultural side of people's behaviour. And then somebody asked me when I graduated from my MBA, I think you should do a doctorate. And I thought, I left school with a broken pencil, man. I didn't have nothing else. And then now they're talking about me doing a doctorate. And I did, and I finished, and was awarded a doctorate in January this year, subject to corrections, which I submitted in July this year. I presume the corrections will be okay because I've heard nothing. I should find out in October. But I got really into something called cultural humility, whereby, to be more beneficial in any working environment, you need to be like them leaders I was talking about earlier in the oil field, leaders that go to the troops and say, if this is not comfortable for you, we will get somebody that's comfortable with. So you're learning from these people that they're not comfortable. You're learning how can I learn and help these people rather than how can these people be best for me, which is the total opposite. If I've got bias, we all got biases and insecurities. Everybody in the human race has got insecurities and biases, but we think we don't have. Our ego tells us, I can do this. But once you accept that you've got biases from your past life, as you grow up, and people that have passed their biases onto you, and you then get insecurities, your decisions are generally made on fear. I need to make this because my boss will fire me. It's not a good way to make a decision. I need to make this decision because I don't want to look like a plum when it goes wrong. That is not a good way to make a decision. I've been doing some stuff recently about decision making in sales, where we need to have pluralistic behavior where we take on all voices. So let's talk to the salespeople. Let's talk to the HSE people. Let's talk to the HR people. Let's talk to the marketing people. We are a company. We are one. We're not one team. We're many teams trying to get one result. But if we understand how my job affects them, what happens if I send my timesheet late? How does that affect this business? What happens if I priced a job 10% too low? How does that affect? What happens if the client says this and we don't, because we're working in these silos? They call them silos. I don't know to call them silos. They're all set. We've got cultures for our own group of people, whichever team you're in. Offshore they call the people in the office the overheads. So there's an overhead culture. When you look from the outside, the people looking in are going, there's an overhead culture over there, mate. So that's where I got into it, and I started looking at, why we do that stuff. Why we basically we're all insecure and frightened. But we lay it on the table. We sit together. I've created some workshops for this cultural humility, and it's really making people laugh and wake up. I use an example with food and give them six choices of food, but they've all got to choose the same thing. And then you put them in a room together and watch these people trying to choose one lunch that they're all going to eat. And it all starts off about me, and suddenly people start waking up and going, oh, there's other people in the room here. And then I transpose that into a business environment and go, now what happens when your client cuts your day rate on your jack up by 25%? Bam! How does it? You can have it this way, or this way, but you've got to make the decision which department will take the cuts for the best for the whole company, not for that department. And then they start to get it. They start to think, oh, there's other people in the company other than me. And it's just, like I said, I don't see many leaders, to be honest. I think we've gone through this phase of social media, Google leaders. I call them Google leaders because they go on Google and get all the answers, right? LinkedIn leaders and all that. Millions of LinkedIn leaders and companies are... everyone's a leader, but companies are falling left, right, and centre. There's no work. But all these leaders can't get us out the shit.
I think you're right, though. I think that it's the social media aspect of people going on and saying, "Oh, this guy's got a Lamborghini, but he's just stood outside some of the boys' house," or something like that. And it's the easy, misled, maybe not more narrow-minded, ideology that's kind of getting drifted into people that's really causing that as well, though, is it? I mean, it's so easy. I mean, anyone can sell a course in anything. I was on I can't remember what social media platform, and someone's selling a course on how to get into FIFO over in Australia, and he's charging someone like $30, and you're like, what? What is someone benefiting off that? Like, why don't you just sell it for free? I mean, because the same information somewhere on Google if someone's bothered to look, but what that does is, and it's pretty obvious, isn't it? If I pay $30, I'll get offshore. And then when you open up the course, you'll find, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And then you go, hang on a second, I'm going to do loads to get offshore. Like, it's not just a case of $30 and I'm offshore. But they know that they could pride on individuals who are maybe really keen to get offshore or maybe a bit vulnerable in that stage to go hard. And then the next thing you know is, this boy's making $30 off these people that are buying a course, and yeah, and they're not going offshore because they've got more to do on the back of it, and still there's a lot more that comes after it. But at the end of the day, he's probably put in the small print, listen, this doesn't help you get offshore, or you won't get offshore if you buy this course or something like that. But that's not what you sell. You can't sell that. And I think, I totally agree. I do. I totally agree.
I sort of tell people that I'm not going to change the culture, because I'll put it simply: when in your house you said 4 children and a wife, right?
Yeah.
So in your house you've got your own culture, man. You'll have your culture with you and the wife, and you've got the culture with the children where you don't swear, you don't do this, right? So there's a different culture. Right? Then you go outside the house, and it gets a bit bigger because you bring in the grandparents. So the family culture gets a bit bigger. And then you go into the office. And then Joe's got another culture with the office, and it becomes massive, very big. Like. So, if somebody come to Joe and said, "Right, Joe, you've got some problems. I'm going to fix the culture in your family," you could have get out of here.
You're all right.
You pay me $100 to attend my course of the day. I'll change the family culture. You're going to go, yeah, you man. But when we go to the office and somebody phones up and says, "Listen, man." I remember speaking in Madrid last year somewhere at IAGC or something, and one of the big companies says, "We've got these people and they're going to change my culture." And I started laughing. I said, "What are you laughing now?" I said, "Because it's nothing going to happen. One man can't come in, run a course or a workshop and change your culture. That's just not going to happen, mate. Nothing will happen. You will pay a lot of money. You will get a lot of flack. Nothing will change. It will just regurgitate stuff that you already know. You need to be aware how to change as a person. Only then, once you become aware, you can then start moving in a different direction in your office. It becomes more harmonious. Nobody can do that for you. I can make you more aware, but I'm not going to change your culture. That's just never going to happen. That will never happen. I am not that powerful. If one man could change the culture, there'd be millionaires because they would, but they know because they can't do it. It's just not nonsense. Sales pitch. But it's kind of funny to watch it.
Well, one of the things you said now is Parkinson's quite a big part of your story. Yeah. How has that affected you in general? It doesn't seem to affect you from the way you're speaking and stuff like that at all. From one thing I will say, but I've only been on here for 55 minutes, so I can't really say that much. But how has that been?
Truth, a bloody nightmare. Because I move. You can see I'm moving a lot, right? I move a lot in my chair, and that's because I can't sit still, right? That's part of the battle, right? But I didn't know that I had it. I didn't suspect something was wrong. A couple of years ago, like I said, when I was working for Maersk at the end of my career at Maersk, I was very, how would you say they call it? I wasn't nice to be with, right? I was very angry and bitter and just twisted. You're not depressed. I can't remember the word now. As Parkinson's kicking in. You don't get depressed, but you get this. I can't be bothered attitude. I just can't bother with nothing. So it started with that. I lost my sense of smell, but quite some time before that, and didn't tweak. I asked my wife, "Did the flowers and thing born not smell or something?" And she's looking at me like, "Where's that guy coming from?" And we didn't tweak, and then. So it went on for a while, and then when I was at modular resources in Singapore. I started my doctorate, and just before lockdown, probably a year before lockdown, my two middle fingers were very stiff, and I couldn't use them, and I would use the left hand on the mouse. Try to use your left hand on the mouse. It's kind of comical. So
I can imagine.
I couldn't use the keyboard. I couldn't use the keyboard properly, and then I thought I played a lot of golf, and my golf went rapidly downhill. And to the degree that when I swung the club, that my hand would open and the club would fly. And my friend said to me, Singaporean guy, I think you got a problem, mate. You need to go and get it fixed. And I've been trying for about 3 years in Singapore to get some sort of diagnosis. And I was kind of down. I tried everything private, basically used all my cash to try and find out what this problem was. And I was just about to go to the UK. I was fed up. I was just about to go to the UK and on the National Health and say, look, I've got this problem. And I went to this public hospital in Singapore because I'm PR here. And I said, I've got this problem. Showed them, this hand I could use, this one, I just couldn't move it at all. At the time, I couldn't move it. And they said, oh, that's kind of serious. They took me in, long and short, they took me in for a week, did a lot of brain scans and stuff. And then I think they had no idea. Then they made me walk down this corridor. They were going to do these nerve tests where they put electricity in your body and jump around. And this Indian lady said, walk up the corridor. And I walked back, and I walked up the corridor, come back, and she said, I've got it. She says, before I do these tests, I don't need to do them because I now know what you've got Parkinson's. I was like, wow, man. And it was just like brutal. She came out, she said, sit in the chair. She did all these tests, and I was jumping around all over the place. She said, no, your nerves are fine. You've got Parkinson's, mate. And she said this, don't get depressed, mate. You can do this. And I sat there for about 20 minutes, and I thought, didn't know what to think. I thought, I'm going to die, and that negative comes in. And then after 20 minutes, I tried to be light, right? I've been trying to live it because I'm in AA, right? I shouldn't advertise fat puppet later, but I've been sober for 30 over years. So I live it out of time. I try to live quite simply, right? So I said to this lady, can I exchange this Parkinson's for something else? And she said, pardon? I said, well, can I swap it for hay fever or something? And she said, no. And I said,
it doesn't work that way.
Maybe I need to go and live with you, right? So I went back upstairs. My mistress is in the room waiting. She said, what is it? And I said, Parkinson's. She was like, oh. And then for about 3 months, I was kind of ill, getting used to the drugs. And it's like a brain disease where your brain doesn't talk to the parts of your body. So your arms and your legs and, they don't communicate properly. And my right side, my Parkinson's is on my right side. Initially, it's changed now to nearly all sides. But my right side was, not limp, but my gait was lopsided when I walked. My right arm, when you walk as a normal human being, your arms swing backwards and forwards. Only my left arm does, and I didn't really know what was happening. I didn't understand it. And then I started to drool at times. A few other things, my memory was kind of rough. And then they said, take these drugs. So I took them for a couple of months, and my golf went back to normal. And then I went to another specialist, and he said, oh, we don't take them drugs, take other drugs. And then I went through the suicidal part where the drugs were fucking with my head, and I wanted to jump out of windows and drown myself in the swimming pool. And I had a motorbike. And I was telling myself to smash it into a wall, all that stuff. And I'd never had it before. I'd never had anything like that before. So, I now understand them people that go through that. Oh, that's black. Everything's dark, black, pure black. But the drugs were crossing over and interfering with each other. That was a few months. And then I found a network in the UK, Parkinson Network, which is absolutely phenomenal. The NHS is phenomenal. Although I live in Singapore, I go back, I see the doctors over there. I belong to a golfing Parkinson's network, a sports foundation from a guy in London who's got horrendous Parkinson's, and he's only 49, and he started this big network, sporting network. I play walking football and in the UK and golf, and I've got all sorts. It's absolutely breathtaking what the UK does for Parkinson's and other people, to be honest. I just landed back from the UK yesterday because I was over there 3 months with the Parkinson gang, playing golf and doing all sorts of wonderful shit. My boy's a prison officer at Shop Prison. Strange choice of job right now. But I was staying in his house and just outside Glasgow. And I sat on his staircase one day and I couldn't put my socks on.
Oh, no.
I couldn't put my socks on, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, I think I've seen it." And I love him. He's a great kid. He said, now I get it. Now I see what you tell me. I couldn't put my socks on. Some days I can't put my socks on. Some days I can't put my shoes on. I can't put my boxers on. It's like my voice will go very silent. I think I'm talking loud, and people are going, "Well, what's he saying, mate?" It's like all these different things. But I try and laugh. My motto is to laugh my way through it as best I can. And I try and raise money into the bargain for Parkinson's where I can. But it's not nice. But I am what I am, so I do my best.
It certainly doesn't seem to have affected the personality in you. That's the most important thing, isn't it? Yeah.
You can't. It's kind of funny because some of the drugs they give you drive addiction, right? In the subtlest way, right? I've been sober for 37 years, and people could take from that what they wanted. So I got into trouble before, and so I was addicted to alcohol, but now I'm all right. But these drugs, I take dopamine and dopamine agonists, and they've got this effect where they're very subtle and drive you to addictions, and you really don't know what's happening until something happens, right? And I was like, first of all, what I'll do is I'll get another wife. And my wife's lovely, one of the most beautiful human beings on the planet, right? And I'm thinking, wife. My head's twisted, and then I'm thinking, what I'll do is I'll get a debit card in the UK and I'll open a Paddy Power account, and I'm not a gambler, right? And then I'll do the lottery, and maybe I'll start betting on the football, and I'm thinking, gee, what's that all about? And I didn't see it coming, right?
Yeah.
And I found out what it was all about. And I met a guy a couple of weeks ago in the UK, and I was telling him my symptoms, and he went, "You don't take them drugs anymore?" I said, "No." He said, he had the same problem. I said, "Well, what happened to you?" He said, "Well, my wife worked out I had a problem when I would have bought 40 pairs of sunglasses." And he walked into the shop, bought 40 pairs of sunglasses, and walked out. I thought it was normal. And I thought,
Fair enough.
So we try and laugh. But yeah, whatever, you do what you can do. Get through life and try and help somebody else, and you'll be fine. But it's cool.
No, and I wish you all the best of it as well, because it can be an easy thing to take and not something that's easy to deal with. But it's always, like I say, it doesn't seem to affect your personality or your ability to have a good all the good conversation. That's crucial, and you don't seem to be down about it.
No, like I said, I was down for 20 minutes. I cried a bit.
Yeah.
But I've not been down since. I get frustrated when the drug. See, what happens is when the drugs just switch off, right? And the best way to explain Parkinson's in a humorous way is, I was playing golf in Telford somewhere earlier in the year with a gang of Parkinson's guys, and we're a bit slower than the rest. When my drugs are not working, I can be a bit slow dawdling around. So this guy, Chris, he said to me, "Have you ever tried to describe your Parkinson's, Peter, to anybody?" I said, "No, not really, mate, no." I said, "How do you describe yours?" He said, "Listen, we're on the golf course." And he said, "This is how I explain it. I can drive a ball 230 metres, but I can't take the ball out of my right-hand pocket." And that for me, I can't. If I've got something in my right pocket, I can't take the tee out. I can't take the ball out. I can't. It's crazy. It's just I can't put I'm sitting on the bed wondering how am I going to get. Worse still, I'm standing up in the bedroom thinking how am I going to get my shorts on, and then my missus is looking at me going, sit down. sit down, because I was but yeah, just laugh, try and laugh, because it can be quite funny, but
Yeah. Take
the
the humor side of a bad thing. It's it.
Yeah.
Looking back in your career, what's the proudest moment that stands out?
The proudest moment, I think, admitting some of my errors, I would be the proudest moment. The cultural stuff, and throwing the shoe and kicking somebody out of the jacksie, which is not a nice thing in that part of the world. It's kind of nasty thing to do. And seeing them errors and then putting them to some use to help others get a more harmonious working environment. That was some of the proudest stuff I've done. More recently, I was working for another company, and I quit in January. There was a lot of politics going on, and I was helping there was a younger guy, an Indian guy, Amir. He's a smashing young man, and I was sort of mentoring him to take my position. And I knew that they would try and get rid of me after, but what I don't like is the political side of it, and this lack of courage and lack of decision making to say, listen, Peter, once we've got this board trained up, we're going to need to release you. For me, that's cool. I can live with that. But when you start playing games, I was quite proud of getting that guy to the position whereby he could do that job. More recently, that was one of the successes for me, was helping that guy get to a position where he could do that job, albeit, I quit and said to the boss, I was so stressed with the backstabbing and the knifing and all that stuff that I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. I was very rigid. I said to my wife, if this is the way stress in the office affects Parkinson's, I don't want to work for that company anymore. I went in the office and I quit that day. And I've not worked since. And I'm looking for work. Obviously, I'm looking for work in a different arena, because we need to have people to be able to go to work and come home and not affect their children, not affect their wife, not affect their health. And for me, if I can help that going forward now, that'll be a proud day for me, because there's too much of that, Joe. There's too much of that. People going home offended, stressed, psychologically stressed. There's just too much of that now. The society is going in a direction where humans are not important anymore. Numbers are becoming important, and the dollar is becoming important. But what's the point of having hundreds of thousands of dollars if your next generation is committing suicide or stepping away from the business because there's no real leaders per se? So yeah, I think trying to use my own experience to help others could be one of the greatest things I've achieved in this oil and gas business.
Yeah, I couldn't round it up any better than that.
Yeah.
And I thank you, and thanks so much for coming on, Peter, as well. It means a lot. It's not easy to get people to come on, but it's I'm delighted you've come on, and especially share your story.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks. Hope it works.